Welcome to the inaugural episode of NFC West Mixtape, hence the throwback music. I'm Viens, that's Rob Guerrera from Seahawks Forever and the Gold Standard Network. But we're going to do a little something different here. This is the inaugural episode of this iteration of kind of a combined show that the two of us are going to do. This is weekly, and we're just going to talk all things NFC West. And of course, this being the first one, we'll take a look at this weekend's matchups and talk a little bit at the end about how we think everything's going to shake out in this division. Rob, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. The one thing we're not going to talk about on this show is anything Seattle Mariners related. You and I will just avoid that completely. We usually touch on that a little bit whenever we're on each other's shows, but let's stay as far away from that as we possibly can.
What about good teams?
That's right. Teams that you can figure out, teams that you know what they are. We're going to talk a lot today about who we think these teams in the NFC West are. And of course, the biggest matchup are the two teams that we both cover. So we'll save that until the end because they're playing each other. Let's start with the Cardinals at New Orleans. And let me ask you this, first of all, what do you think? Who do you think the Cardinals are? Because I feel like we go through this every offseason. They're always kind of the team that everyone wants to sort of prop up and call the next big thing. I never really buy it, and I have a reason for that I'll expand on later. But what are your thoughts on the Cardinals, and what do you expect on Sunday?
I think the Cardinals are less than the sum of their parts. They should be better than they are. I like Jonathan Gannon. I like the coaching staff there. I think that he's a good coach. Kyler Murray is physically talented. Marvin Harrison Jr. is there. Trey McBride is wonderful. Like, they have good pieces individually, but then when you combine them, they're not as good as they should be. And I felt like their play kind of fell off last season. And I know they made some pieces that they like, and they added a couple of good things. But again, we know the pieces are good. Is the fit good? And it hasn't been in years past.
It's funny you say that. And just so the folks watching know, we didn't prep this show together as far as we didn't have conversations about which way we were going to take this. This is exactly how I feel about the Cardinals as well, that we don't know what the sum of the parts is. They've added more parts, like Monty Austin-Fort, since he got there a couple of years ago. He's done a nice job sort of managing the draft, picking up more assets, right? They needed a lot of talent infusion on the defensive side. They did some of that through free agency, of course, with Josh Sweat, but they added some young players in the draft, players that to some extent I liked throughout the draft process. We just don't know what they're going to look like when they're put all together yet.
And I don't know how confident I feel that things are going to change. I feel like with Arizona, it's like, I got to see it to believe it. I understand that we could be living in a world where it does sort of gel and they're a lot better, but I won't admit that we're in that world until I see it. I'm not going to predict that is going to happen.
Now, talking about teams that aren't the sum of their parts, and that maybe the parts aren't even that good, they probably have the softest landing of any team in the division this weekend, and so they get an opportunity to make a statement on Sunday, playing a New Orleans team that has all sorts of questions at the quarterback position and whose best players on defense are in their 30s. My thing with the Cardinals is this, though. No matter what they do to any of the position groups on either side of the ball, I don't believe in the quarterback. And until that change, and I also believe he's at an age and he's at a point in his career that I don't think it's reasonable to expect more out of him than what we've seen in the past. What are your thoughts on Kyler Murray?
With quarterbacks in the NFL, especially quarterbacks picked high, and obviously Kyler was the first overall pick, it's, all right, show us something, your rookie year, early in your career. Great. Can you improve on that? And then can you take the next sort of step to becoming one of the best quarterbacks in the league? And I think clearly Kyler showed you there's a lot to like there. I think he did improve a little bit, but we're all waiting for him to take the next step, right? When is he going to put a complete season together? When is he really going to step up as a leader and lead this team to success, not only in the regular season, but also in the playoffs? And maybe it's just never coming, right? Like, maybe this is as good as Kyler Murray is ever going to be. And I don't mean to try and knock the guy, but, not everybody does take that next step. And like you said, this isn't year 2 or year 3 for Kyler Murray right now. And I just don't know if there's more, and I don't know the reason for it. I don't know if it's a studying film thing. I know everybody made a big deal about the film clause that was in his big contract that he signed, that he had to watch like X number of hours of film a week or whatever the situation or the stipulation was. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know, but he just doesn't seem like he's going to ever take that next step and ascend and fulfill the potential that he has, because he does have tremendous physical ability.
That's the thing with him. I mean, in so many other quarterbacks, when you look around the league, you see those flashes of greatness. And maybe we saw some of those before the ACL injury, but most of them were related, in my opinion, to what he could do with his feet and also what he could do down the field. I think the arm talent deep down the field is pretty spectacular. It's the other stuff. It's the basic stuff. It's the routine stuff. And particularly the middle of the field stuff that has really been his Achilles heel throughout his career. So then they go out and they spend a high draft pick on Marvin Harrison Jr., who I don't think anyone really doubts the talent with him. But the thing he does best is operate in the middle of the field, dig routes and in-breaking routes. That's not Kyler's strength. And so I think there was some criticism as a rookie that maybe Harrison didn't live up. I mean, the numbers are fine, but I think we probably were guilty of unrealistic expectations. I just don't know if that's a good fit between those two.
We've seen with quarterbacks of a certain height, over the middle of the field is not necessarily where they thrive, right? Russell Wilson, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the bugaboo with him for years, is that, I mean, I don't have to tell you, you know about Russell Wilson. So maybe that's part of it. I just was always frustrated that it seemed like there would be games or quarters or halves where they just couldn't get Marvin Harrison the football. Like it would be a complete afterthought. And I'm sitting there, I know when they were playing the Niners, I was like, hey, this is great. We're doing a great job of forcing them to go somewhere else. It just seemed like that connection wasn't as good as maybe we all hoped. And you're right, maybe there were too high of expectations, because Harrison did end up catching 60 passes for almost 900 yards and 8 touchdowns, which is certainly a fine rookie season. But it didn't seem like they were simpatico. And hopefully, if you're a Cardinals fan, I don't know if they worked out together in the offseason, did anything extra, but hopefully they're sort of on the same page a little more in 2025.
They certainly tried. I think he was 9th in the league in end zone targets. Certainly in the red zone, they tried to get the most out of him. And then Trey McBride is a great number 2 there. I was really surprised that they didn't more aggressively try to address the wide receiver position, though, opposite Marvin Harrison.
They like Michael Wilson, I guess. I mean, he's flashed at times, but I'm certainly not, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm not staying up at night because of Michael Wilson's on the other side of Marvin Harrison.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? Like, I don't, this is going to sound mean, but like, there's a lot of good wide receivers out there in the draft every year, all the time. Like, go get one. Don't settle for, we think this guy might be pretty good. Like, take one every year and just churn through them and see what you got.
Yeah. And I might be a little more bullish on this team, and I might be more afraid to play them if they had a devastating running game. And it looked a couple of years ago, it looked in Jonathan Gannon's first season like they might be that team. I just don't, again, back to your initial point, some of the parts. It looked like they were putting together the pieces of a really good offensive line there for a bit. I don't know that they've taken that next step. I think if Evan Brown is one of your starting offensive linemen, I don't know that you're going to get to that level. They're just a team. Look, I'm open-minded to the idea that they could become something. I just don't see greatness in them. And again, for me, it comes back to the quarterback. But they win Sunday, right? They're going to go 1-0 out of these teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Cardinals have their issues, but let's look at who they're playing. I mean, come on, you want to talk issues? It's all over the. I don't know what New Orleans is doing. Like, what is that? But Arizona should handle their business. As a Niner fan, obviously, I'm hoping they don't, but I fully expect them to. They don't even have to play well to win that game.
Yeah. When your salary cap is where theirs is, and your roster is where theirs is, and you've spent draft picks on quarterbacks the last 3 years, and your second rounder can't beat out your fifth rounder from the year before, it's probably not a great sign.
Can I just say about the Cardinals defense too? Like, they have to be better. And I think Jonathan Gannon is a good defensive coach. In 2023, They allowed touchdowns on 29% of opponent drives. Last year, they improved to 20%. That was still 30th in the league. Now, I know they loaded up Calais Campbell. Obviously, they drafted Walter Nolan. They drafted Will Johnson.
Mhm.
Nolan, unfortunately, is going to start the year on PUP, so that's a bummer.
Right.
I think they had real high expectations for him. But, as much as we talk about Kyler and needing to be better, and he does, there wouldn't be so much on Kyler's plate if the Cardinals could actually stop somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the Darius Robinson pick last year. He was a guy that I really liked, and he was banged up a lot his rookie year. We'll see what he has in store for him this year. They added Dalvin Tomlinson. He's a good, reliable kind of plugger in the middle. But yeah, they're going to need a lot out of Josh Sweat. It feels like they have a lot of their eggs in his basket for certain.
And 37-year-old Calais Campbell,
it just keeps ticking, man.
I mean, he's incredible that he's been able to do it. But at some point, the train goes off the tracks.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly, I like that safety duo there, but they got to be better up front.
Completely agree.
I'm intrigued by the matchup between the Rams and the Texans, but not as intrigued as I might be before I looked at who the Texans are starting on their offensive line. All the investments they made there a couple of years ago, and this is an NFC West show, so I don't mean to focus too much on the Texans, but it's relevant here. And, they gave up all those assets for Laramie Tunsil. That lasted 2 years. Have you looked at the 5 that they're going to run out there on Sunday?
Well, I feel like they're trying to tell us that all the troubles were a coordinator and offensive line, that none of it was C.J. Stroud. I don't know how much I buy it. I'm not going to lie. I haven't watched every single Texans game. I can't say that. But, you got to put some of it on you. We crowned C.J. Stroud, and I was guilty of it too, so I'm not absolving myself. We crowned C.J. Stroud pretty quickly, and maybe, just maybe, we should have pumped the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. As far as the Rams go, I mean, it starts and it ends with Matthew Stafford, 37 years of age, back problems, right? I certainly know what that feels like. But when you start talking about having injections, right, and missing workouts he was supposed to make, it's been 2 weeks now. Everything's hunky dory, right? Everything's just magically fine. It's not fine. I mean, if I'm a Rams fan, every single time he drops back and gets a little bit of pressure, I'm wincing. It's like, Jimmy Garoppolo, as well as anyone out there who does what we do. Did they do enough to protect themselves in the event that Stafford can't play 17 games?
It's hard to say, because as much as I dislike Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback, I never, ever would want to see him quarterbacking my team ever again.
But McVay loves him.
We've seen Jimmy. How do I want to put this? We've seen Jimmy Garoppolo end up on winning teams when he has a really good offensive play caller, right? Say what you want about Garoppolo. I know he wasn't responsible, wholly responsible for a lot of them, but they won. If you look at his winning percentage, they won a lot of the games he started. So if you're telling me, can the Rams win with Jimmy Garoppolo and Sean McVay? Yeah, I think they can still win some games. But the drop-off between Garoppolo and Stafford is massive, massive, massive. And I know the Rams keep telling us everything, don't worry, he's fine, he's fine. The man had an epidural before the season begins, okay? My wife has given birth to 2 children. I have seen an epidural closer than I ever wanted to see one. Mm-hmm. They take a needle and shove it into your spine, okay? It's not something you do willy-nilly. It's not a minor procedure. It is a big deal. You are not fine if you are getting an epidural. And the fact that he had to have one before he has taken a single hit, before he has had somebody fall on top of him, before he has played outside in cold weather, compounded by the fact that he's, up there in age and taking a lot of hits and has a lot of mileage on that body, I would be very scared if I were a Rams fan about Matthew Stafford missing time this season.
I will say this about Jimmy Garoppolo, if it should come to that, maybe he is in the right place at this point in his career. He damn near beat the Seahawks in week 18 last year against a good, motivated defense and a team that had to win that game. He looked great in that offense.
I want to see Jimmy Garoppolo with Devontae Adams again, which anybody that watched the receiver show on Netflix. Adams screaming on the sideline, I have to get out of here away from Jimmy Garoppolo. I've never been hit like this in my life because Jimmy G's throwing him hospital balls. They claim that everything is good now. Again, it's easy to claim that, just like your first week at college, right? Oh, you tell all your roommates, I'm going to clean everything up, and everyone's going to clean up after themselves. It's going to be fine. And 2 weeks later, the place is a mess. There's clothes piled up everywhere. The sink is full of dishes, and this place stinks like a barn. So we'll see if that gets to it, how those two work together. But that is a major thing for the Rams, because if Stafford does stay healthy or healthy enough, they're good enough to beat anybody.
Yeah. To me, they were the hands down favorite in this division because of continuity, and they've added some nice pieces this year as well. And I was blown away by how good that young defense came together last year, especially that defensive front, those two Florida State rookies. And they've got, tons of continuity on offense as well. I know there were some issues about the left tackle, but he's going to be out there. He's going to play. They re-upped Kyron Williams. There was a question as to whether that would happen. They add Adams to Nakua, swapping out Cooper Kupp. And I had him as the favorite in the NFC West. I'm not so sure anymore because I don't think we can count on Matt Stafford playing 17 games. It's that crucial.
And we're going to get to Christian McCaffrey a little bit later in the show. But like McCaffrey, I feel like Stafford has an injury this back where you can be fine. And then you could wake up and just be out of commission. Like it can just crop up and flare up. You could, this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's true. You could sneeze and hurt your back. Like it is a very temperamental thing. And so that is the sort of Damocles sort of hanging over the Rams season, is the health of Matthew Stafford's back.
And that's a great point. And I am no doctor, but I have both dealt with severe back issues in my younger days. I actually had an orthopedic consult at one point. I was a surgical candidate. I also have witnessed up close multiple epidurals, and I've even seen one go wrong, and that's not pretty. An epidural is a non-surgical option to get a player back on a field. Like that's where we're at. If you're resorting to an epidural, it means you probably should have surgery, which means herniated disc, bulging disc, nerves being affected. But we need to get you on the field, so we obviously can't have any back surgery. So this is the last resort. Look, they're doing all the right things, I think, trying to put on a good face. And maybe he does get through 17 games. But beyond that, I mean, when you're talking about the Rams, like they have to be thinking about life after Matt Stafford.
And I'm sure that they are. And I just want to say, too, like an epidural is not a repair of anything. It's not like, oh, there's an issue, we're going to fix the issue. It just
calm things down.
Yeah, it's just a numbness thing. Yeah. And so whatever is causing the pain that is forcing Matthew Stafford to have an epidural, that's still there. That hasn't been fixed or repaired. So again, I'm sure Rams fans are tired of hearing about all the doubt, but like that's really the only doubt I have with their team. Their secondary is not great, but their front is so good. I think it'll be passable. And I think they're going to score enough points too, to where like they're not going to have to win a lot of 6-0 games. So if their secondary, takes it on the chin a little bit, I think they'll be able to survive. To me, it is all about Matt Stafford.
Well, and if we know anything about Sean McVay, and we saw this a couple of years ago, the more you count that team out, the more they're probably likely to be pretty good, and they might just find a way. So we'll see what happens. Again, though, just similar to the Cardinals, I've got them winning week 1.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're ever going to count on the Rams and Stafford, right? Like this is the week. He's the healthiest and freshest he's going to be. I do think DeMeco Ryans is going to, it's not going to be easy for the Rams. DeMeco is a great defensive coordinator. That Texans defense has some young talent. But when I look at coach quarterback combinations, I put McVay and Stafford, right up there with anybody you want to name in the NFL right now. And I think they'll have enough to get it done in week 1.
All right, let's talk about the marquee matchup in the division. One of the marquee matchups, I think, in the NFL. Seahawks hosting the 49ers, 1 o'clock on Sunday. I think the last I checked, the 49ers are still a 2.5-point favorite in the game. Sounds like 49er fans are going to travel well. It's going to be an electric atmosphere. Not a lot of tickets available, and the ones that are in the high $200 range. It's very much a premium event there this weekend. But we got some news yesterday that nobody was expecting, and that has changed the conversation that we're having here today. when suddenly Christian McCaffrey, who by all accounts was having a fully healthy preseason after coming off the issues he had last year with the calves and the Achilles, he was limited in practice, had to leave practice, I believe was the report, because of some calf soreness. Is there an update today? What do you know about his status?
Well, not much. We got that news that Christian McCaffrey was a late add to the injury report. Apparently, he warmed up to participate in practice and seemed fine, and then left practice. We don't have any more information as of this recording. He did not speak to the media yesterday, which is normally the day that he does. And usually when a guy is hurt, they don't talk to the media. So that's not a good sign. Tom Pelissero was on Good Morning Football this morning and said he had heard that there are not alarm bells ringing in San Francisco, which is good. But guess what? These are my alarm bells. Okay. That is what I felt when I saw this. Time is a flat circle. Again, we're days away from week 1, and all of a sudden Christian McCaffrey pops up with a calf thing. It's just like I said with Stafford. McCaffrey has bilateral Achilles tendonitis. Tendonitis can flare up at any point. And the Niners have been super careful with Christian McCaffrey this preseason. He hasn't played at all in the preseason games. They're giving him days off of practice. Like, they're doing everything they can do, and it's still flared up. So, yeah, I'm very, very worried right now.
Saw an assessment today from I think it's Jesse Morse. He's big, the sports doctor on Twitter, and he was talking about the specific spot in the calf that seems to be the one that's impacted, and how that's just a notoriously difficult spot to heal in the calf, no matter what you do. We probably would have led otherwise in this segment with talking about the injuries in the receiver core and what that's going to look like. But if Christian McCaffrey is compromised or can't go on Sunday, what do you expect this offense to look like?
Well, I expect it to be a lot of Brian Robinson. I'll say that, who they just traded for. This is the crazy part about the 49ers, as banged up as they were this preseason. Everybody on the 53-man roster practiced yesterday. Christian McCaffrey left practice, but he participated in practice in some form. Everybody on the 53-man roster, which is nuts. Now, of course, Brandon Ayuk is not on the 53-man roster because he's opening the year on PUP. But even Jordan Watkins, their promising rookie wide receiver that they like, who sprained his ankle in the Broncos, the first preseason game with the Broncos, returned to practice yesterday, kind of before anybody else thought he was going to be able to get out there. So even though there's questions about McCaffrey, they're actually, knock on wood for the 49ers, relatively, actually really healthy right now.
That receiver core that we mentioned, Brandon Ayuk is, as you said, still not back yet. Juwan Jennings has been banged up. Sounds like he's going to go on Sunday, though. And now he's happy as well. A little adjustment to the contract, a little money thrown his way. George Kittle coming off really late in his career, one of his best seasons last year. There's a lot of continuity on that offense. And what I find fascinating about this matchup is strength against strength and weakness against weakness. The continuity of the 49ers offense, despite Ayuk being hurt and Debo not being part of the picture anymore, versus the continuity on the Seahawks defense. Every starter back, 15 players that started games last year. I think it's 9 players that played over 300 snaps. And then you look at the other matchup, and it's a completely remodeled Seahawks offense against a completely remodeled 49er defense. Where do you sit today on which of those matchups wins out?
Well, I'm so fascinated to see what this 49ers defense looks like. There's 8 new starters. They haven't told us who's starting at safety, so I don't know the exact number, but there could be as many as 8. Yeah, Kyle's got to keep that super secret, right? But you're talking about essentially an entirely new defense for the 49ers and a new defensive coordinator. Now, it's Robert Saleh, who's going to be in the same scheme, but if you watch the preseason 49ers football at all, the defense looks completely different. Nick Sorensen was the most boring, bland, milquetoast, vanilla defensive coordinator. They were in nickel defense last year 80% of the time, and they rushed just 4 players 80% of the time. So pretty much every offensive coordinator got the same thing every play from them, which was 4 rushers in nickel, and that's it. Robert Saleh was the complete opposite this preseason. He's got 9 guys up at the line of scrimmage on every third down. Guys are dropping, guys are rushing, guys from the secondary are blitzing. There's actually going to be variety and scheme and confusion caused by the 49ers defense. Now they have a lot of young and unproven players, so we'll see if they can pull it off. but I'm at least excited that they're not just going to run out there and do the same damn thing every time and cross their fingers and say, well, I hope Nick Bosa gets there.
Well, it seems like that's what they're relying on, right? Is they're really leaning into Robert Saleh being able to coordinate this defense effectively, because they really went heavy in the draft. They chose the draft as their path to rebuild this defensive line. It's essentially Nick Bosa and then a whole bunch of new names. And is that enough for you? Because there's a couple of factors working here. Young defensive linemen notoriously, as much as any position group, take the longest to kind of mature and find their footing and make an impact. Even some of the best interior defensive linemen in this league weren't that great year 1, year 2, year 3. Are they? And I know that these guys are listed on the depth chart as maybe not being on the first team, but CJ West and Alfred Collins and Mikael Williams. Are you confident enough that Saleh can put them in a position to be effective?
Well, I'm confident that he'll put them in a position. Yes, like he's going to put them in a position to succeed. I have no fear about that whatsoever. Will they actually succeed once they get there? I don't know. I have yet to see Mikael Williams in a professional football game because he missed the entire preseason. He got hurt in the joint practice before their first preseason game with the Broncos and didn't come back till after all the preseason games were over. So I don't know. He had rave reviews in practice, but take that for whatever it's worth. Right. But he's at least going to start. So they are showing some degree of confidence in Mikael Williams. Alfred Collins and CJ West are not going to start. They've had their ups and downs, particularly Collins, who was hurt. He had a calf injury that he got at the Texas Pro Day and basically wiped out pretty much everything. So he's been playing I think he played in a couple preseason games, but really hasn't even practiced that much. So he's kind of a step behind everybody. But you're right. They use the draft to stock up on this defense to stop the run. And that's why I'm fascinated by this matchup, because Seattle ran the hell out of the ball this preseason. Would they run 84 times, I think, in 3 preseason games? Yeah. So I would expect that Seattle's plan is going to be to put that to the test as well and run the heck out of Kenneth Walker and everybody you have there to see if this sort of revamped defense can actually do what they're supposedly built to do.
Now, the other thing we expect from this Clint Kubiak-led offense now to complement the run game is a rhythm, timing, quick passing game, which had its origins there in the Bay from Bill Walsh and that old West Coast offense. Charvarius Ward is gone. Hufanga gone. How do you feel about the rebuilt 49ers secondary?
I actually kind of feel pretty good about the secondary. I think their corners are really good. They have 3 corners that hopefully will be very strong for them. Diamador Lenore, I think, is for sure a number 1 corner. Somebody that I know when he was there gave DK Metcalf all he could handle in their matchups. Renaro Green was a rookie last year, but was really good and has played well this preseason. So those are their 2 starters on the outside. Their nickel is Upton Stout, a rookie that they drafted. He's 5'8". Okay. He is tiny, especially for a corner, but everything about him is that he's feisty and physical, but again, didn't really get to see a ton of him in the preseason because he was hurt, but he has drawn rave reviews. If those guys can live up to the hype that they have generated, there are not many teams in the NFL that have 3 solid corners, maybe 1 or 2, but 3 is tough. So I feel good about that. The safety situation is a little up in the air because Malik Mustafa is recovering from an ACL. Not a reconstruction, a repair of a graft is what they keep saying. So he's not going to be back till around week 8 or so. He had a very, very strong rookie year. So the safeties are a little up in the air, but I do like the corners.
All right, time to flip this around. Ask me about the opponent.
Well, my first question was going to be about the running game. Are they as dedicated to it as they appeared to be in the preseason? Because last year, you didn't really have to worry that much about the Seahawks run game.
The answer is a resounding yes to that. And that's a theme that we've seen all throughout OTAs and training camp. The players talk about it. Abe Lucas, who just signed a big extension yesterday, talked about it early in camp and just flat out called out Scott Huff and Ryan Grubb for their approach to it last year, that, you can talk the talk, but we work it every single day. And you saw the results of that in that Kansas City game. It's one of the most impressive preseason performances I can remember seeing out of an offensive line in a run game. And Kansas City had Chris Jones wasn't out there, but they played 7 or 8 of their starters. Karlaftis was out there, some other guys. And I had a chance to see almost every single training camp workout this preseason. And I can tell you that the work is being done on a daily basis. They are absolutely committed to it. It's not going to look like it did when Pete Carroll got frustrated and they weren't running the football enough, and they brought Brian Schottenheimer in back in 17-18, and they ran it to a fault. Everything is going to work off of that, but they're absolutely committed to it. Now, there's some questions for us today, or I shouldn't say us, if we're going to be an objective podcast here, looking at the NFC West for the Seahawks, because they had a CMC type moment yesterday where Anthony Bradford, who resoundingly won the right guard job that was up in the air heading into camp and was a dominant force in that Kansas City game, playing his best football of his career, suddenly came up with a back injury, didn't practice yesterday. So we're not sure exactly which five we're going to see. Hopefully we'll get an update today. But yeah, the running game's going to be a big part of their approach.
First of all, you should call that a Stafford injury situation, not a CMC. I prefer if you go that route by it. But I wanted to ask about the offensive line, because in doing my research for the game, I was digging up info on Sam Darnold. And what I found was that last year, 45% of Sam Darnold's dropbacks were 3 seconds or longer. That was by far the longest in the league. He was holding on to the football, and 29% of Sam Darnold's incompletions were due to pressure. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free. I think the Seahawks offensive line is not as good as the Vikings offensive line was last year. And if Sam Darnold is going to be under pressure, he's not the same quarterback that we saw in Minnesota. And you got a perfect example in that playoff game where he looked the complete opposite from the guy he looked like during the regular season. So can the Seahawks line give him the time that he's going to need? Because we saw Geno be under pressure a lot last year.
We did. Yeah. The short answer is yes, but it's a combination of things, right? It's how quickly he gets rid of the ball too. And that certainly was an emphasis this year in camp, and something that I was really impressed by. And as camp went along, you saw his internal clock speeding up. And when it did break down and something wasn't there by the time he hit his second or third read, he'd take off. And he's really being encouraged, maybe even more so than what Kevin O'Connell did in Minnesota. He's being encouraged to use his legs. He's a very athletic quarterback. He's mobile. He can run the football. There's going to be a lot of designed rollouts built into this offense. And I think you're going to see that metric come down. But the other part of it is just, I think I was so impressed by the teaching that was happening with this offensive line with John Benton, who's been in the league for a long time, has had a ton of success. Again, we don't know which five we're going to see out there. But it's everything working together. It's not just on Sam Darnold to make that happen. Now, his biggest weakness last year was pure shotgun drop back passing situations. We'll see how many of those they can stay out of. And the way you do that is run the football and work the short passing game, right? But I will say this, that Minnesota offensive line at the end of the year anyway, may not have been that great and may have been largely to blame as well for those collapses against Detroit and LA, because there's a reason that they showed all three of those interior offensive linemen the door and swapped in new guys this offseason and aggressively went out and got Will Fries and Ryan Kelly and a draft pick at right guard. There's a reason those guys aren't on the roster anymore.
Yeah, I can't support you guys with John Benton as an offensive line coach. He was Kyle Shanahan's first offensive. Like, don't be taking our coaches or the 49ers coaches and using them against them. I don't support that by any stretch of the imagination.
They got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so you're confident that we are going to see a version of Sam Darnold that at least more closely resembles the Minnesota Vikings Sam Darnold than the absolute pumpkin we saw with the New York Jets and the Carolina Panthers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think we saw enough of that last year. I do think he's being unfairly blamed for everything that happened in week 18 in the playoff game last year, especially that Rams game. That was a complete organizational failure on offense. That was not just Sam Darnold not playing well. I do expect there to be a better version of him. Yeah, just as you would expect any player who's getting more opportunities in a good situation. And I think that it's just a great match, Rob. It's just this offense, and it's similar to what he had in Minnesota. There's a lot of there's some shared DNA there. It's just the vibe coming out of that camp and everything I was able to see with my own eyes this year is just that the Kubiak, Darnold, Benton, and this offense, the scheme fit works and he's really comfortable with it. Julian Love the other day, the Seahawks outstanding veteran safety, was saying that Sam made them a better defense over the last 6 weeks because of how much he understands what the defense is doing to him, different looks and different reads and different keys. And he would share that with the Seahawks defense and cause them to make some adjustments. Julian Love said Sam Darnold made them better. And we're talking about a defense that the last 7 games last year was top 5 in just about every major metric.
Are you worried that you have the inferior Kubiak? You guys have Clint. We have Clay. Any worries there?
No, I thought you were going to go Gary, but I think he's just, I think he's out to pasture, right? Kubiak's an really, really impressive guy. Obviously, I don't know Clay. I haven't interviewed him. I haven't seen him. Clint's he's very cerebral. I tell fans this all the time that are worried about, you don't have to worry about this with the 49ers because your head coach is an offensive guy, but it's always a concern when you hire a defensive head coach is what if you hire a hot shot, the next Ben Johnson, and then he goes and he gets another job and then you have to start over again. Maybe that guy's not as good. What if this offense is really good? The offensive line's improved and he gets a head coaching job. Just watch him in a press conference. Like he's a very dry, there isn't a lot of personality there. He's not the kind of guy that's going to bang down an owner's door in an NFL head coaching interview and blow away an organization. But he's just a very smart, cerebral coach. And he has conviction about his scheme. He's grown up with it, literally at the breakfast table, listening to his dad talk about it. And Mike Shanahan, even before Kyle, that's where he learned it from. It's a belief system. Everything's tied together. And I expect it to succeed. On what level? We'll find out.
I was hearing a lot of talk about, I shouldn't say hearing a lot of talk. 49ers beat writers were asking 49ers defenders, like, do you feel comfortable facing this new scheme by Seattle? Because it's basically the scheme you've been facing all preseason, right? Like it comes from the Shanahan tree, Kubiak Shanahan tree. Does that give them a leg up? They were very political, let's say, in their answers. So I'm not taking anything away from that. But I hated that this game was week 1, Dan. I hate division games in week 1, especially facing new schemes and new quarterbacks in week 1 because you don't have a ton of film to go off of. But I do think maybe some of that will be mitigated by the fact that the 49ers have seen a very similar scheme for the past 9 years under Kyle Shanahan.
I think that's fair, but that's why I love that it's week 1. Because then it's also given them the entire offseason to figure out ways to deceive and to, self-scout and not go with your old tendencies and go away from things. I think it's a fascinating matchup. I'm confident in this version of this Seattle team because I'm extremely confident in the head coach and what he's put together. The culture there, the vibe is incredibly positive, much more positive than I think it might have been if some big moves hadn't happened like they did back in March. I can't wait for Sunday, man. I can't wait to see how this game goes. And as week 1s usually do, it's going to tell us a lot about each team. And it's also going to tell us nothing about each team.
Yes, because week 1s are weird. I will say Niners have won 3 straight road games in Seattle. They would be just the third team ever to win 4 straight road games in Seattle, which is crazy. 53% of the fans are projected to be 49ers fans. Like, what's going on out there? What happened to the 12s, man?
Let's get into that. So, first of all, that stat was from Vivid Seats, based only on the tickets that they hold.
Okay.
I've dug. I could find absolutely no confirmation as to how accurate they've been in the past on those numbers. I did find this, though. The 49ers over the last 10 years are number 2 in the NFL at how well they travel generally. And it's about 45%. So there's only an 8%. If that number is true, it's only about an 8% difference, right? Makes sense. You can drive to the game. It's an easy shot. You have the whole offseason to plan it. The Seattle thing is a lot more nuanced than just, their fans don't turn out anymore. It's a lot more nuanced than that. It'll be interesting to see what it's like on Sunday. But I will say this. I went to both preseason games in Seattle. It felt different. Even with, preseason crowds, right? The stands are about 2/3 full. They were clocking 110 decibels on the sideline noise meter. There seems to be an excitement about Mike Macdonald in year 2 and what he can accomplish. There seems to be a little bit of a, oh my God, they finally did it in reference to the offensive line and some of the improvements there and some of the commitment there. I always expect teams to travel well in the NFL these days. That's one of the things. If you lock everything down, I had this debate with a passionate Seahawks fan today who said, if it's like it was last year, I'm giving up my tickets that I've had for 30 years. I said, well, then you're just going to make it worse. And also, if you lock everything down the way some fans think that you need to prevent this, well, then it's going to be just as hard for you to travel and go elsewhere. And Seahawks fans have traveled very well as well. All that matters is the product on the field. If the product on the field is good enough, long enough, that stuff will work itself out, and fans won't want to sell their own tickets. Now, the other factor, and something that's, a really boring conversation, is that I do think there was a shift after the Super Bowl years kind of wore off and things started to trend downward a little bit, where people did sell their tickets and they were snapped up by corporations, and those companies own those tickets. In particular on the visiting side and the club seats. And those tickets are just up for whoever wants to buy them on a weekly basis. And I don't know what you do about that.
You mentioned the coaching. Are you with me in saying, because I think that the NFC West is the best coach division in the NFC and second best in the NFL. I can't give it the best because the NFC West or the AFC West has Super Bowl winning coaches almost everywhere. And the one that hasn't won a Super Bowl is Jim Harbaugh. They have Andy Reid and Sean Payton and Jim Harbaugh and Pete Carroll. So that's a lot of rings over there. So I'll give it to them. But in the NFC, I think this division is the best coach division in the conference.
I would agree with that. And a big part of that is because I do think Jonathan Gannon is a very, very smart coach. I didn't when they hired him, we all saw it. There was some awkwardness there, and it just felt weird. He just didn't. There was a little bit of an uncomfortable nature to that. But I remember thinking that Dan Campbell's first press conference was awkward too. And how did that work out, right? And then the flip side of that is Brandon Staley absolutely won his initial press conference when he was hired down by the Chargers. And how did that work out? So there's a lot of brain power in this division, a lot of brain power and a lot of shared DNA. Even when you talk about the Cardinals, Gannon is a defensive guy and he doesn't come from the same coaching tree, but you talk about shared DNA on offense. McVay, Shanahan, Drew Petzig, and Clint Kubiak all come from West Coast, all have crossed paths, all have worked together in the past. I think that makes for a very fascinating division.
I completely agree with you. And I have said this to anybody that will listen. The winner of this division is the team that has the best division record. Like, I really think it's going to come down to those games. And the Niners were abysmal in the division last year. They won one game all season. It's literally going to come down to those games. That's why I did not want this game in week 1. I wanted it later in the year where everybody had a chance to put their pants on. But this is a massively important game right out of the gates for both Seattle and San Francisco.
And to our point about how balanced we think this division may end up being, it's a damn shame the Seahawks couldn't just get that last field goal and get the win against Pete Carroll and the Las Vegas Raiders in the preseason, or they all would have finished the preseason at 2-1 in a 4-way tie. I know you got to get going. This was a fun first episode. What do you expect? I know how this is going to go, but what do you expect to see on Sunday at Lumen Field?
I expect to see a lot of running. Even if Christian McCaffrey isn't there, I think both teams are going to try to run the hell out of the ball. And I expect it's going to be a close game. My official score prediction was 24-21 49ers. And I will say this, if it comes down to a late field goal for the 49ers, the Seahawks are winning. Like, book it. There is no chance that Jake Moody is going to make a late kick in Seattle with all those fans going nuts. I don't care if it's 30 yards. He ain't making it. So it better not come down to a field goal for the Niners, but I do think it's going to be that type of a very, very close one-score game.
Well, if it comes down to Jason Myers, there are Seahawks fans who will tell you that he is not good in odd numbered years. And I have to admit, I did say he was fine in the games when we saw him. He had his struggles in training camp. I'm not sure how confident I'd be if the tables were turned. I'll say this. I have a hard time with score predictions. I do feel confident in the prep that Seattle has done and how this offense has come together. When the schedule first came out and I looked ahead, I built in, sort of baked into my predictions, some growing pains on offense. But then you look at what Clint Kubiak did coming out of the gate last year in New Orleans with, I think in some ways, maybe some lesser talent. And this offense seems dialed in and ready to go and ready to make a statement. I have one more question for you.
Okay.
2 weeks ago, Mike Shanahan was asked what he expected this year. And he gave a very surprising answer that even 49er fans expressed to me that they were surprised by. And I wish I could remember the words, but it was essentially, well, we're just going to see how it goes. And we hope that we grow and we get better as the season goes along. And some people took that to mean this is an adjustment year. Do you feel like, because the thing with 49ers used to always be edge and attitude and nastiness and chip on their shoulder. Is that still there?
I don't know. I can't tell you that. They're sort of stuck in two worlds. They made 11 draft picks this year. They have a ton of youth. 23 of the 53 men on the roster are in their first year with the 49ers, and 10 of those 23 are rookies. They have completely turned over this roster, but at the same time, they also have really good high-end players, and a lot of them. Best tight end, best middle linebacker, one of the best edge rushers in the league, the best running back when he's healthy, the best left tackle in the league. So they can't totally say it's a rebuilding year because they have too many great players to completely do that. But also they're realistic about their young defense, about all the turnover that they have had, and about sort of trying to build the next iteration of the Shanahan 49ers. If you gave them truth serum, they would tell you 2025 is a transition year, and really 2026 is when they think they can get back to true contention. But I was not surprised to hear Kyle say it because I think he's right. I think there's a very good chance that they are a much better team by the end of the season than they are in week one against Seattle.
Well, one thing that youth does is it lends itself to volatility. And so who knows what we're going to see on Sunday. The Seahawks have 12 rookies on their roster. I think it's 32 of the 53 players are still on their rookie contract. And sometimes that just lends itself to, we don't know what's going to happen. Just for the sake of putting something on the record, I'll say 24-17 Seahawks. We'll check back in next week, see how we did. As far as this show goes, first of all, be sure to subscribe to both channels, the Gold Standard Network for Rob and Seahawks Forever for me. This show was recorded. We plan on doing live shows as we move forward so we can get your interaction, your takes, and your comments from around the division. So be sure to support both channels. Rob, thanks for doing this, man.
Can't wait to do it next week.
All right, we'll see you then.